She descended into the bath, and the milk enveloped her skin like a snow-white cloud. 500 she-donkeys had given their milk to fill the marble basin to the brim. Poppaea tilted her head back against the edge of the bath, and her hair, long, copper-toned, precious as amber, spread across the surface of the milky sea in golden serpentine streams. The air in the private baths was saturated with the scent of honey and almond oil. Light from oil lamps refracted through the milky haze, making the marble walls breathe with warm radiance. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel this, her skin absorbing the fats of the milk, becoming so smooth that even silk seemed coarse by comparison. Slave women stood at a distance, not daring to disturb the sacred ritual. One held a silver pitcher filled with rose oil, another, a sponge from Egyptian seas, a third, a comb fashioned from tortoise shell. Each knew her place in this silent theater of beauty. Beyond the walls of the baths, Rome thundered, the forum filled with merchants' voices. The Senate gathered for session. Praetorians changed guard at the imperial palace. But here time flowed differently, slowly, viscously, like the milk that enveloped her body. Here a particular kind of power was born, not the kind granted by lineage or sword, the kind that was created anew each morning, touch by touch, drop of oil by drop, glance into the polished bronze of a mirror. Poppaea slowly lifted her hand from the milk. Droplets streamed from her fingers, leaving the skin luminous. She ran her palm along her forearm, sensing the incredible softness. There it was. The secret she had transformed into a weapon. Beauty perfected to its zenith. Beauty as strategy. As a path to the throne of the most powerful empire in the world. She opened her eyes. Gray-green, the color of a sea wave before a storm, and looked at the slave woman with the oil. The woman approached soundlessly, sank to her knees at the edge of the bath. Poppaea extended her hand, and warm rose oil poured onto her palm. The fragrance swept over her in a wave. Rose, myrrh, something else. A secret blend. She slowly rubbed the oil between her fingers, traced it along her neck, behind her ears, across her collarbones. Every movement was a ritual. Every touch upon her own skin, a rehearsal of future power. The slave woman with the comb drew near and began carefully combing through the damp hair. The teeth glided through the strands, separating them into streams of liquid gold. Poppaea closed her eyes partway, listening to this sound. Quiet, measured, lulling. In this sound dwelled certainty. Tomorrow she would see him again. Nero, the emperor who ruled the world but lost his reason when gazing upon her. Rome in the first century of the new era was a city of contrasts, grandeur and decay, marble temples and slums in Subura, philosophical debates and gladiatorial combat. Emperor Nero, who ascended to the throne in the 54th year, inherited an empire at the zenith of its might. His mother, Agrippina the Younger, had eliminated all rivals to place her son upon the throne. And now she ruled through him, until she collided with a force more sophisticated. That force was Poppaea Sabina. She was born into a noble family around the 30th year. Her grandfather had been consul, her grandmother celebrated for beauty throughout Rome. But the girl inherited true fame from her mother. That same Poppaea, whom Agrippina had destroyed in the struggle for power. Young Poppaea was left an orphan, but received an inheritance, and an understanding of how the world of Roman elite functioned. Knowledge that beauty and intellect could be more dangerous than legions. In those times, the position of a Roman woman was paradoxical. Officially, she remained under the authority of her father or husband. She could not hold state offices, speak in the Senate, command armies. But unofficially, through marriages, intrigues, influence over men, women from the highest strata possessed enormous power. Livia had effectively ruled the empire. Agrippina poisoned Emperor Claudius to elevate Nero to the throne. But Poppaea chose a different path. Not the crude force of intrigue, but the subtle game of seduction. She studied the art of beauty as a military commander studies tactics. Roman matrons used cosmetics, but considered excessive adornment vulgar. Poppaea disregarded these conventions. She surrounded herself with specialists, slave women from Egypt who knew the secrets of Cleopatra, Greek women who mastered ancient massage techniques, Syrian women skilled in preparing fragrances. Her baths in donkey milk became legend even during her lifetime. Pliny the Elder wrote of 500 she-donkeys maintained specifically for her. The milk softened the skin, made it luminous. But Poppaea went further. She added to her baths honey from Greece, almond oil from Africa, rose petals from Persia. After each bathing, slave women applied to her body a mixture of oils and powder from crushed pearls. She did not conceal these rituals. On the contrary, she transformed them into part of her image. Poppaea understood something vital. In a society where female beauty was valued, but its open display condemned, whoever dared to break the rules would gain boundless power. She made a spectacle of her beauty, transformed self-care into sacred ceremony. Poppaea's first husband was Rufrius Crispinus, prefect of the Praetorian Guard. The marriage gave her position, but not influence. Her second, Marcus Salvius Otho, friend of Nero's youth, future emperor. It was Otho who brought Poppaea to the palace. This was a fatal error. The emperor, already burdened by his marriage to Octavia, virtuous but dull daughter of Claudius, saw in Poppaea everything he craved. Not merely beauty, but passion. Not merely a woman, but an enigma. Roman society of that time was obsessed with Greek culture. Noble Romans spoke Greek, read Greek philosophers, imitated Greek customs. Poppaea exploited this. She studied Greek poetry, conversed about philosophy, played the lyre, but to Greek refinement, she added Roman practicality and Eastern sensuality. The result was devastating. Poppaea's day began long before dawn. In the pre-dawn hours, when Rome still slept, she was already awake. First procedure, purification. A slave woman brought water infused with herbs. Poppaea washed her face, neck, hands, slowly, methodically. The water was nearly cold and her skin erupted in goose flesh. But this awakened the body. Then massage with oils. 2 slave women worked simultaneously, their hands gliding across Poppaea's body in a rehearsed dance. They began with the feet, massaging each toe. They ascended higher, calves, thighs, abdomen, shoulders, arms. The oil absorbed, leaving skin silken. This was not merely care. This was preparation of an instrument. Poppaea's body was her principal weapon, and she maintained it in impeccable condition. After massage, exercises. Not crude, but fluid, flowing. Poppaea had learned them from a Greek woman who once danced in the temple of Aphrodite. The movements resembled dance, stretches, bends, twists. They preserved flexibility, made her gait light. Roman women from noble families considered physical exercise improper. Poppaea ignored this prejudice. When the sun rose above the Palatine Hill, the principal ritual began: the bath. Not a quick ablution, but a procedure lasting many hours. First, preliminary bathing in warm water with oils. A slave woman scrubbed her skin with a soft sponge, washing away the remnants of night. Then Poppaea passed into the main bathing chamber, where a bath already waited, filled with fresh milk. 500 she-donkeys gave milk each day. It arrived at dawn, still warm. Slave women strained it through the finest linen, then heated it to body temperature. They added honey, 3 amphorae for each bath, almond oil, rose petals, enough so that the surface of the milk became covered with a crimson carpet. Poppaea submerged slowly, first the feet, then calves, thighs. She paused, allowing her skin to adjust. She sank deeper, abdomen, shoulders. She tilted her head back against the edge of the bath. Her hair spread across the milk. She closed her eyes. Time stood still. The milk worked like magic. Fats penetrated the skin, nourished it, made it supple. Lactic acid gently exfoliated dead cells. Honey moisturized. Oil created a protective layer. After an hour in such a bath, Poppaea's skin glowed like marble. Emerging from the milk, she passed into the massage hall. Here worked specialists from Egypt, heirs to those who had attended Cleopatra. They possessed secret techniques. They knew how to massage the face to prevent wrinkles, how to work with the body to preserve firmness, how to stimulate points that made skin luminous from within. Poppaea lay on a couch draped with the finest linen. The hands of the masseuses glided. First the face, every muscle, circular movements from center to temples, pressure on points at the base of the nose, beneath the cheekbones, then the neck, long movements from bottom to top. Shoulders, arms, abdomen. Each touch was deliberate. After massage, masks. The first was of white clay from the island of Crete. Mixed with rose water, it was applied to face and neck. Poppaea lay motionless for 20 minutes while the clay cleansed her pores. Then they washed away the mask and applied the second, of honey and almond flour. This one nourished, moisturized. The third mask, of crushed pearls with egg white. This created radiance. While the masks worked their effects, other slave women attended to her hair. Poppaea's hair was her pride, long, thick, copper golden. She washed it with a special compound of egg yolks with rosemary oil, then rinsed with water infused with chamomile. This preserved the color, added luster. Combing was a separate ritual. The tortoiseshell comb passed through each strand hundreds of times. This distributed natural oils, made the hair silken. Sometimes they added a drop of cedar oil for fragrance. Roman fashion dictated elaborate arrangements, but Poppaea often chose simplicity, loose hair gathered only at the temples with golden pins. This seeming casualness was meticulously calculated. It created an image of natural beauty, dangerous, alluring. After body care began cosmetics. Poppaea used white lead for her face, a mixture of lead white and chalk, which they applied in a thin layer, creating the effect of porcelain skin. On her cheeks, rouge from cinnabar. On her lips, red color from cochineal. On her eyelids, shadows from ground antimony. The crucial element was not the quantity of cosmetics, but the artistry of application. Each stroke was nearly invisible, but together they created an effect of supernatural beauty. Her skin seemed luminous, her eyes deep, her lips crimson, enticing. Dressing was the final act. Poppaea preferred silk, expensive, brought from China along the Great Silk Road. She chose deep colors: purple, indigo blue, saffron yellow. The fabric was so thin it was translucent, hinting at the forms of her body but not fully revealing them. Jewelry, moderate but precious. Golden bracelets, earrings with pearls, a necklace of emeralds, each ornament emphasized beauty. Gold set off the copper hair. Pearls underscored the whiteness of skin. The final touch, fragrance. Poppaea used special perfume prepared by a Syrian perfumer. Base rose with notes of myrrh and frankincense, a complex scent that evolved throughout the day. She applied drops to pulse points, wrists behind the ears, in the crooks of elbows. The fragrance enveloped her in an invisible cloud. The marble floor of the corridor was cool beneath her bare feet. Poppaea walked slowly, and each step echoed in the silence of the palace. To the right rose columns of Egyptian porphyry. To the left, a wall painted with scenes from the lives of gods. Somewhere ahead, beyond heavy bronze doors, Nero waited. She paused at a window overlooking the inner garden. The sun declined towards sunset, staining the sky copper tones. In the garden, a fountain murmured. Birds sang in golden cages. The world seemed serene. But Poppaea knew the truth. Behind these walls, her fate was being decided. Today, she would achieve what she had dreamed of for 2 years, or lose everything. A slave woman adjusted the folds of her stola. Silk the color of wine glided across her body. Poppaea ran her palm over her abdomen, sensing slight tension. Fear? No. Anticipation. The doors swung open soundlessly. The Emperor's inner chambers were immersed in half-darkness. Heavy draperies muted the light. Oil lamps burned in niches. Nero stood at the window, his back to the entrance. Broad shoulders, curling hair with a golden sheen, a chiton of Tyrian purple. He did not turn when she entered. Poppaea did not hasten toward him. She stopped 3 paces from the threshold, allowing him to sense her presence. The fragrance of her perfume slowly filled the space. Rose, myrrh, something elusively Eastern. She knew. He sensed this scent, recognized it, desired it. "You made me wait." Nero's voice was low, with barely audible reproach. "An emperor does not wait," she answered softly. "He anticipates." Nero turned. His eyes, grey, restless, with feverish gleam, glided over her figure. Poppaea did not lower her gaze. Between them hung silence, heavy, saturated with the unspoken. "Octavia must go," Poppaea pronounced. Not a request, a statement. Nero's face twitched. Octavia, his wife, daughter of the divine Claudius, symbol of the legitimacy of his power. Divorce from her meant scandal, confrontation with the Senate, fury of the people. "You ask the impossible." "I do not ask." Poppaea took a step forward. Silk rustled. "I remind you who you are. You are emperor. You rule the world from Britannia to Parthia. You build palaces of gold, and you fear one woman who does not even love you." The words were cruel, but Poppaea spoke them slowly, almost tenderly. She drew closer by another step. Now the distance between them was an arm's length. She raised her palm and touched his cheek. A light touch, barely perceptible. "Octavia looks at you with duty," she continued. "I look with desire. Octavia lies beside you with submission, I with passion. Octavia gives you legitimacy. I give you yourself. Which matters more? Nero seized her by the wrist, not roughly, but firmly. In his eyes a storm raged. Anger, desire, fear, resolve. Poppaea did not flinch. She met his gaze, chin slightly raised. She knew. Everything was being decided now. Mother will never consent, he exhaled. Your mother. Poppaea spoke this word with slight contempt. Has ruled you for 10 years. She chose your wife. She decides whom you meet. She controls your every step. Are you emperor? Or her puppet? Nero's face contorted. Poppaea knew. She had touched the wound. Agrippina suffocated her son with her love and power. He hated her and feared her simultaneously. Poppaea gave him what he sought: permission for rebellion, justification, strength. If I renounce Octavia for you, Nero drew her closer, their faces an inch apart. What will you give me in return? Poppaea smiled, slowly, triumphantly. Everything you desire, and more than you can imagine. She did not finish. There was no need. Nero understood. In this moment, he made the decision that would alter the history of Rome, that would lead to his mother's departure from life, his wife's exile, the scandal that shook the empire. And all this for the sake of a woman who had made of her beauty an empire within an empire. Poppaea ran her hand along his cheek, then drew away. She turned and slowly walked toward the exit. The silk of her stola streamed across the floor, leaving behind a trail of fragrance. At the doors, she turned back. I await your decision, she pronounced, but not for too long. Beauty does not wait forever. The doors closed behind her. Nero remained alone in the half-darkness of his chambers, but the decision had already been made. Within several months, Octavia would be sent into exile, then executed on false charges. Agrippina would perish at the hands of hired assassins, and Poppaea Sabina would become Empress of Rome. Poppaea ruled beside Nero for 4 years, years of luxury and power, when all Rome bowed before her. She bathed in milk, wore silk and emeralds, received senators and philosophers. Nero worshipped her. He built palaces for her, dedicated verses to her, forbade her depiction in art, from fear that artists could not convey her beauty. She bore him a daughter who passed away after several months. Then she became pregnant again, and here the story takes a tragic turn. Different versions exist of her departure. According to one, Nero, in a fit of rage, struck her with his foot in the abdomen, and she perished along with the unborn child. According to another, she passed away from complications during childbirth. But the result was identical. In the 65th year of the new era, Poppaea Sabina departed this life at the age of 35. Nero was inconsolable. He did not cremate her body, as was customary in Rome, but ordered it embalmed according to Egyptian rite. He arranged lavish funeral ceremonies at which he burned more incense than Arabia produced in a year. He deified her, built a temple, forbade mention of her name without reverence. Her departure from life became the beginning of the end for Nero. He lost the only woman who understood him, controlled him, gave him the illusion of love. Without Poppaea, he descended finally into madness. 3 years later, the Senate would declare him enemy of the state, and he would depart this life by his own hand, uttering the famous words, "What a great artist perishes." But Poppaea remained in history, not as a tyrant's victim, but as a woman who used the only weapon available to her, in a patriarchal world. Beauty. She transformed self-care into art, and art into power. Her baths in donkey milk became legend, a symbol of luxury and feminine strength. Ancient historians condemned her. Tacitus called her shameless. Suetonius accused her of destroying Nero. But behind these accusations, something else can be read. Fear of a woman who refused to play by the rules, who was not content with the role of virtuous matron or submissive wife, who seized power without having right to it. In her story, there is no moral, no unambiguous heroes or villains. There is a woman born into a world where her gender stripped her of opportunities, and she found a way to circumvent these limitations. She used what she possessed: beauty, intellect, understanding of male psychology. She transformed her body into an instrument of politics and personal charm into state power. Today, 2,000 years later, we still remember her name. We remember the milk baths, the copper hair, the power over an emperor. We remember her not as a concubine or courtesan, but as a woman who altered the course of history, using the only weapon that was in her hands. Poppaea's story is a story about how beauty can be strategy, about how the personal becomes political, about how women found paths to power in a world that forbade them power. Her path was harsh, her methods merciless, her end tragic. But for an instant, for 4 brief years, she ruled Rome as no empress had ruled. Not through birth, not through marriage, not through conspiracy, through the force of her own personality, through beauty perfected to its zenith, through understanding that in a world of men, a woman can triumph by playing by her own rules. And this victory, though temporary, though paid for with life, will remain through the ages. There you have the complete truth about Poppaea Sabina. Yes, she bathed in donkey milk. Yes, her beauty drove an emperor to distraction. But behind this stood not licentiousness, but desperate struggle for survival in a world where a woman possessed no other instruments of power. Poppaea transformed self-care into art and personal charm into political force. Is that not magnificent? If the history of courtesans and consorts who changed the fates of empires has captivated you, leave a like. Subscribe to the channel to discover even more secrets of closed palaces. And be certain to click the bell. Ahead await stories even more astonishing. Soon we shall journey to another era, to other women whose beauty cost entire kingdoms. Until we meet again, friends.